Om Jnanatimirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Nityanamine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschacharya Shitarinam Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Shri Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Shreyam Dravyam Ayat Yagyach Jnana Yagya Parantapa Sarva Karma Kilam Partha Jnane Parishama Yatte. O chastiser of the enemy, the sacrifice performed in knowledge is better than the mere sacrifice of material possessions. After all, O son of Pritha, all sacrifices of work culminate in transcendental knowledge. At the end of second chapter, Arjuna is pretty confused that what Krishna is talking about in terms of trying to relieve him from his confusion about his position and duties in his life. So, when quite often we encounter very high philosophy, it is not so easy to relate to it. This is why this Bhakti Yoga, in essence, it's a very, very high philosophy. It's very difficult to comprehend. It's not easy. And this is why many times whenever people come in touch with this process, they just tend to outrightly discard it. Just, as whatever excuse they might be giving it for it. We know when the intellectuals earlier, so-called intellectuals, like during the British time, they came to India, they encountered this Vedic philosophy, which was the deepest of all the philosophies practically. And some of them who didn't have any ulterior motives, they appreciated it. But then many of them who just, came across various kinds of details and information and principles, they just couldn't relate to it. And therefore they discarded it as some kind of mere mythology or something that is just irrelevant or some kind of a fairy tale story. Fairy tale. So even nowadays when we try to present this philosophy, to the people, it's not easy to relate. It's not easy. It's just so deep, and they just quite often. I also encounter some people who just say, "Can it be a little simplified? Can it be simple? I mean, what simple do you want? Just chant, dance, and be happy." In one sense, it's pretty simple. But so sometimes it appears to be pretty simple, but sometimes when they come across different descriptions, philosophical descriptions, or even just reading Bhagavad Gita itself, which is just a beginning, they cannot comprehend. They have difficulties relating and understanding what it is. So we see that Arjuna also, when he starts listening to the philosophy that Krishna is presenting, of course we know Arjuna is the greatest of all the personalities practically. He's an emperor, he's very learned, he has his senses under control, he has so many wonderful qualities. But he also presents, a doubt to Krishna that, what am I supposed to finally do? Am I supposed to renounce things? Am I supposed to work? What am I supposed to do? It becomes very difficult for him to understand. And then therefore even at the beginning of third chapter and then in the beginning of the fifth chapter, same question he's posing him. Should I renounce or should I work? It's not so easy to understand how to act in a most appropriate way. So should I renounce? Because the principles of Tyaga is very important. And then should I work, perform my duties? How am I supposed to act? So therefore in the third chapter Krishna describes different kinds of activities we know. Mostly different karmic, karma, jnana. Karma, akarma, vikarma. And then now in 4th chapter he's going to talk about knowledge. And then he's going to combine both. He's going to combine work with knowledge. And that's going to be 5th chapter. So finally Krishna is going to conclude in one sense in the 5th chapter. Of course this is all pretty much conclusion, but not for Arjuna. And not for us, because we cannot understand how in the higher principle everything is compatible. There are no contradictions on the higher levels of, Krishna consciousness. Because it includes absolutely everything. There's no contradiction. For somebody who understands the scriptures, there is no contradiction. Vyasadeva wrote Mahabharata for those who are, less intelligent, who are not Paramahamsas. You know that Bhagavatam is for the Paramahamsas. Mahabharata is just for general populace. So quite often people who would compare the both scriptures or any other scriptures, they will find maybe so many different contradictions that are just not, apparently supporting or pointing towards the same goal. And that becomes very confusing. So therefore people who don't have deeper knowledge, they cannot understand the essence. But once somebody understands the essence, like for Narada Muni, there's no difficulty. He's celestial rishi, he's the guru of all the gurus practically. For him there is no difficulty understanding what the principles of Dharma are. He understands Mahabharata is just meant for a certain type of people. Srimad Bhagavatam therefore is meant for a certain type of people. There's no contradiction. It's very easily reconcilable when you have a certain higher understanding, higher knowledge, but everything else is included. So for Arjuna, it is difficult therefore to understand how knowledge and how here austerity, or work can be combined. This is something that Krishna already points out at the end of the 2nd chapter. He says they work in Buddhi Yoga. What means Buddhi? Who can tell? Buddhi Yoga. What is Buddhi Yoga? Why? Okay. But what else? But how that detachment arises? Okay. Still not satisfied. Yeah, that's fine. But how? What's the basic principle? Why is it called Buddhi then? Transcendental knowledge. It's transcendental knowledge. So with intelligence. So working with intelligence, of course, then with detachment, that is nishkarmya. Nishkam karma yoga. Definitely, that's the best. So Krishna already gave the conclusion, but just to clarify further, then he speaks the whole 3rd and the whole 4th chapter. Krishna already gave the conclusion at the end of the 2nd chapter. So with the knowledge, and again, using intelligence, therefore, acting in unattached way. So here, Krishna points out that there are different kinds of sacrifices, therefore. So there are different levels of sacrifice. It's not just, like I said, some people like everything to be just very simple, very just plain, and just, there is a God, there is easy process, and, just do this and that, and then that's all, It's not that simple. Because we know that the world is a world of variety. Not just this material world. What to speak of spiritual world? There's so much variety. So if we just simplify the spiritual life to something that is, just very, very, like very simple again, like this, then where is the question of any desire to learn more? Where is the question of any, enthusiasm, any exploration of any further, knowledge about God, about the relationship of God, about us, ourselves? It stops. It's just not there. Like just people would say, everything revolves around the family, or everything revolves just around the God, thinking that God is just the supreme father figure whom we have to fear and obey. That's pretty simplistic. But will everyone just satisfy with this? No, because you'll have a people who won't be satisfied with this. So you can't keep things very simplistic. Or let's say everybody just works, just perform one kind of duty, and everybody's just same robot-like personality. Will you be happy with that? And no other activities? Most unlikely. So there is variety. Variety is so important because we see how in this whole world there is so much variety that is present. And we see so many details are there. Explaining about different realms and levels of interaction. So you can't just simplify everything and say this is all that it is. It is just like this. Yes, you can simplify in terms of presenting the simple process that encapsulates everything else. But within that again there is so much more. That's the point. There is incredible depth behind it. So you can't just say that everything is just very like very simplistic. It's not, it's very deep. So this is why this philosophy, we may say, yes, it's a very simple philosophy, but to understand this simple philosophy, you have to really, learn a lot to appreciate. And understand a lot and apply a lot. So that includes so much of the variety, so much of the experience that is required. So it's not simplistic in that sense. So we can't just, accommodate some, like people would like, they just say, okay, there is God, there is heaven, and you just, be good, have some faith, and in this material life you do whatever you want to do and that's it. It's pretty simplistic, no? It sounds very simple, isn't it? No, it sounds very simple. But is it really simple as just like that? In one sense, yes. In one sense it is. But do you know how to accomplish, that simplicity? This is something that you don't know. Because, just being good, then what means being good? They have no idea what means good. Understand? So it's not that simple like they wanted it to be simple. It is simple. Yes, being good is nice, but what means being good? Going back to Godhead is nice, but what means going back home back to God? Yeah, God is there, but who is God? That's not so simple. It sounds very simple, and you can, but you have to qualify for understanding that, simplicity. So it's not that easy. It's very deep. Yeah. Or you just have faith. Yes, we have faith. We know that our process is Shraddha. It starts with faith. But then that faith has to become Nishtha, which means firm faith. And in between, and what to speak even after that, it doesn't end. But even in between, there is the whole process of Sadhu Sangha, Bhajana Kriya, and Artha Nivritti. Are people, ready to, sacrifice and surrender to those and put it into practice? No, they're not. So it is simple. Yes, it is simple. But, you just can't keep it simple. You have to act on that as well. And then you will understand that it's not simple. How deep it goes. Like in science. Yeah, okay, we can just pick up anything. Any law, this and that. You may say, yes, it's simple. But to understand it, how much you have to know? How much you have to know? How many other theorems you have to know? How many other, principles and laws you have to be conversant with? So it's not that simple. And it also doesn't end there. Even nowadays, you take anything, it's just unlimited, even just from a material point of view. There is no end of how many particles you can go and search for. It just doesn't end. It's almost it's unending even from a material point of view. Then what to speak of spiritual? So how can there be any simplicity? And if anybody is satisfied with just any simplicity, then where is the question of spiritual, realization? Can you just be satisfied knowing that God is there and that's all in all? Krishna is there and, that's it. That's the end of spiritual life. Huh? Can you be satisfied with that? Let's say Krishna is there and that's the end of spiritual life. It's very simple. Very simple. You don't have to go into any details or whatever. That's it. No, you cannot. How can you be satisfied? Can you be satisfied, let's say you know somebody. You have some friend. You can look at each other or something. Okay, I know him. Is that sufficient? No, you have to develop relationship. You have to, do something. You have to sacrifice. You have to, inquire. You have to get more knowledge. You have to get more information. And then again you relate. These are principles, sambandha, abhidaya and prayojana. Everything is based on this. This is our philosophy. It doesn't just stop, okay, I understand some basic sambandha, some basic relationship, some basic field of activity. I understand this, and then I apply some abhidaya, I act on that principle, I gain some knowledge, and then maybe I get some result out of it, I get something of that application and understanding the principles, but then it expands, then it creates another sambandha which is greater than that. And then again you apply knowledge, you gain more knowledge, and act upon it, and then again you receive greater prayojana. It doesn't end there. So spiritual application is just unlimited. You keep on knowing more and more and more. It's ever expanding. That's what we said. That's what spiritual life is. Spiritual life is not that simple, as some people would want it to be. Because why it should be simple? Why it should be simple? You can have every day just sugar. A little sugar. I give you a little sugar just like this, okay? It's simple. Maybe you'll be happy with it. But if I tell you that, somebody else is having, condensed milk and kheer and, rasmalai and, then what about that? So you'll be just happy with your few, cubicles of sugar, not even cubicles, let's say just few, these crystals, few drops of sugar. You'll be just happy with that and say, this is good enough? No, it's not good enough. It's good enough for those who are ignorant, And it's not going to be good enough because then you'll be looking for something else. You'll be looking for so many other things because by nature the soul won't be satiated. Just can't be satiated, especially with anything material. So in this world, just knowing, that, there is something spiritual there, but what it is really, and that's not going to be satisfying to the soul. So that's why we have to, that's by the nature, the soul is full of knowledge, yes, it's eternal, yes, but it's blissful, yes. But how to be blissful? You have to act upon, that sambandha that you understand that you have with Krishna. You have to start acting, and therefore it's unlimited. So it's not just sufficient to be, living some kind of simplistic life, because that points out that you have really no taste for spiritual life. If you think that, it's just so, there is God and that's good enough, and then I'll be engaged, and like we see so many people in material life, they think being little pious, sometimes coming to the temple, that's all good enough. It's very simple, and it's like, it's not sufficient. It's not going to be satisfying to the soul. It just doesn't work like that. And anybody who has a little taste for spiritual life, he would say it's like, like Ananta Shesha, he can never, enumerate any glories of Krishna. Even he has 1,000 hoods. It's just not sufficient and constantly keeps on speaking. It's unlimited. And Goswamis, they're praying, I wish we would have thousands of tongues and thousands of years that we can keep on chanting, keep on hearing of the holy name. So how can you say it's just, it's something little, it's sufficient in spiritual life? It's impossible. It's ever expanding, it's ever relishing, it's ever blissful. So that's why spiritual life, it doesn't, it's not that simple as some people, as I say, would want it to be. And why they wanted it to be so simple? Because they don't want to surrender to it. They don't want to dive in. That's the only reason. Yeah, I need a little attention just to see that everybody's, alive. So that's the point, we have to dive in, and then we can only relish. If you don't dive in, then how can you relish? So to just keep, we face so many difficult problems, so then can you say that solution is just so easy also? Well, it is so easy, but it's not so easy, because if you want to really appreciate that easy solution, you'll have to really understand what it implies and how you're supposed to act upon it. Because if you don't understand how to act upon it, you will never act upon it. That's another thing. You just won't act upon it. Like if you don't understand these principles of Bhakti Yoga, you'll never act upon the principles of Bhakti Yoga. You'll just discard it as something, it's just, it doesn't sound like something really exciting, or just won't understand what it is. And you'll just apply and do something else that is according to your conditioned material nature. That's all. So here, what is going on, even sacrifice, it's not just question of the principle. It's not just the point of certain principle, okay, I have to do sacrifice. But what sacrifice means, it's external and it's internal as well. Everything within our spiritual practice, even in the practice of the yoga, which starts dealing with the mind, except the processes of Nyaya, Sankhya, and Vaisheshika, which deal mostly with intelligence, then yoga starts dealing with the mind, and our process also as well, primarily focuses on the mind itself. So then with the mind, once you start understanding how all these different principles that are mentioned that are required, austerity, sacrifice, jnana, tapa, work, anything that is there, you have to understand the principle behind it. So it's not just external application that matters, but it's internal. It's internal state, it's internal mentality that is important. It's actually more important than the external application. Yeah. So it's not just how do I fast, how much do I fast, how much austerity I do. That's not the point. The point is what you're going to do with this and why you're doing that. The mentality behind it is more important than the action in itself. That's what's important. Because if you go around and say, I'm so, useless after fast now and this and that, and I've been fasting so long, and you constantly just meditate on all this, then, there's not much benefit out of that. But if you understand I'm fasting so I can do so many other things for Krishna, it's an austerity in that sense that, it's going to be pleasing to Krishna, you have a proper mentality, then that's what it's important. It's not just the activity in itself. So, like this, in this Vedic process, we understand that Krishna here is clarifying so many things because there are different levels. Why there are different levels? Because, it's not everything so simple, because people are under different modes of material nature. People are in the mode of goodness, people are in the mode of passion, people are in the mode of ignorance, and mixtures of those. So for all of those, therefore, there are different levels and there are different practices. So once you understand these, then you can apply, certain principle in the most appropriate way and get a most appropriate result. But if you don't know this, then you won't even apply in the first place. So that's what's going on here, and this is why Krishna is explaining to Arjuna that actually of the different kinds of sacrifices here, their sacrifices culminate in transcendental knowledge. So those kind of sacrifices are the best. So it's not just something that I do the work, I perform some sacrifice, and I expect some result, sakam karma stuff. That's not good enough. I have to come to nishkam karma. And nishkam karma, not just initial detachment from the work, but the work which will be pleasing for Krishna, that you perform with detachment. That's the second level of nishkam karma. So that's the sacrifice that's the best. Because Arjuna wants to sacrifice. Arjuna wants to go to the forest. Arjuna wants to renounce everything. Sounds very easy when there is a lot of trouble, when you don't want to do your duty. But that's what Krishna is pointing out. The whole performance of the duty means that you understand the principles of spiritual practice. Not just I perform duty for, even then Krishna's saying, even just perform duty for sake of performing duty, even that is better. That's also better, but not just renouncing duty when there is some difficulty. That points out to lower understanding of spiritual life. So performing duty with higher cause, that's much greater. Performing duty for purpose of pleasing Krishna, that's the ultimate thing. So with that then we can encompass everything else, and that's what bhakti is. Vedeshu yageshu tapasu chaiva daneshu at punya phalam pratishta manyeti tat sarvamidam viditva yogi param sthanam upaiti chandhyam. That means it includes everything else, jnana, dana, tapa, everything. And then plus Krishna is stating in that verse, saying that, and you'll come back home, back to Godhead. You'll come back to me. So you'll get all the benefits of everything else, but you'll, achieve the ultimate benefit by bhakti. So this is why bhakti includes everything else. So whenever we talk about any what is the greatest sacrifice? What is the greatest austerity? To perform the duties. To perform the duties. I don't give you time to think about it, I'll just state it because we don't have much time. To perform duties, that's the whole point. What's the greatest sacrifice? The greatest sacrifice is to finish your 16 rounds, isn't it? No? It's the greatest sacrifice. And even greater sacrifice than that is to chant your 16 rounds, but with attention. And hear those Hare Krishna and Rama. That's the greatest sacrifice. We don't have to do any other sacrifice in Kali Yuga. That's what's the most important sacrifice, most sufficient sacrifice. And it includes everything else again. You don't have to do anything else. So you do this, that's it. That's perfection. You don't have to think here about doing this and doing that, So that's why Krishna is saying, you just have to understand, you have to have a knowledge. If you won't have knowledge, and this is what all this 4th chapter is about, then you won't be able to apply any of these principles appropriately. You'll be applying it, maybe just, very meagerly, or you just won't get, satisfying results, or you won't know even how to apply. So this is why we have all these detailed discussions about all the different principles and their application. Because if you want a better result, you have to have a knowledge. So that's why knowledge is so important. That's why bhakti again is jnana combined with karma. So we work with knowledge. And therefore we do everything with knowledge. If you do without knowledge, you won't advance that much. You'll get a benefit, some benefit, but you won't advance so much. Okay. Any questions, any comments?